Hi, welcome to Drewreviews. I review movies. This is my friend Shane.
I'm happy to be here on the first episode of Drewreviews. Today we're going to be reviewing Once Upon a Time in America. This is my favorite movie of all time. For those of you unfamiliar with the movie, this is a 4-hour gangster epic directed by the amazing Sergio Leone. It stars Robert De Niro, James Woods, Elizabeth McGovern, and he's listed in the main cast, but he's in about 3 minutes of the movie. Joe Pesci and Burt Young, you may remember him from Rocky. This is not your traditional gangster narrative because it jumps around from flash forwards to flashbacks to it's a completely non-linear storytelling idea, and it's about these four guys growing up in the times of Prohibition, building their bootlegging empire. And we start off in the middle of the action in 1933, and Noodle's girlfriend Eve is killed by 3 hitmen because they're looking for him because he's just ratted out his 3 best friends and they've been killed by the police. And and then we see all these things happen on this night in 33, and then we jump to 1968 where Noodles as an old man returns to Manhattan and goes back to visit Fat Mo. And then we jump back to 1920 where the 4 of them grow up as boys. They impress the local crime boss with Noodles' invention with salt bags. When it first came out, it was not popular. People left the theater. People were booing in the theater. And it was just a complete disaster when it came out. That's because the Ladd Company destroyed it, rearranged to 2 hours, so that's pretty much half the amount that the original cut is supposed to be. Just clocking in at 138 minutes, the movie is rearranged into chronological order, starting from the 4 of them as boys is the first scene. And I find that to be completely and totally ridiculous. I'm sure you can agree.
I can agree there.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense because his vision was to have this take place in flashbacks. And all those cool flashback transitions that he added in, you can't have any of those because it's all edited out. Probably the best transition that I can think of would be when he's an old man in 1968 and there's a space in the wall, where he takes that piece of the wall out and he's standing on the toilet and he looks through. And then we cut back to 1920 where he's watching young Deborah dance. And that is and she's listening to Amapola and doing her dance routine. Martin Scorsese led a restoration of the film with the Gucci Foundation and restored it to its intended length or intended runtime by Sergio Leone, just running at about 4 hours and 15 minutes. The extended director's cut adds about 25 minutes of footage to the film. Way back, his plan was to do 2 3-hour movies, 6-hour cut. Kind of like The Godfather, where it's 2 parts, but there isn't a third one. We don't count that.
No,
we don't count that. So it would kind of be like The Godfather and 2 parts. I think that would have been really cool.
This movie I thought was really, really, really good. It's probably one of the best movies of all time. Best for him. I honestly thought the acting was great. Basically every aspect was great.
Yeah, you'll certainly never see a movie like this because I'm sure you've seen most of those gangster movies, and this is the definitive gangster picture, no question. Too many times when I hear people talking about Sergio Leone, Robert De Niro, James Woods, too many times when I hear people talking about them, I don't hear Once Upon a Time in America mentioned. It's annoying to see that. Gangster is like my favorite type of movie to watch, but a common reoccurring theme in all of them is that they're very serious. There's not a lot of humor. Goodfellas would be the exception. A lot of jokes in Goodfellas. I think that there's more emotions in Once Upon a Time in America than any gangster movie ever made. The first thing I can think of would be that opening. The opening scene hooks you right away. And then we start hearing God Bless America. And then Eve walks into the room, the hotel room. She turns on the light, pulls the sheets on the bed over, and there's bolt holes. And then a hand comes down holding a gun, smashes the picture of Noodles. And then we see this hitman, and then another hitman emerge from the shadows behind. And it starts off so quiet, so calm, and then we hear that. every time I see that, I get startled no matter what.
I honestly thought the opening was just great. It was one of the best openings in cinema. Like I said, I still get startled every time I see that clip. No matter what, it's like I know it's coming, but still I jump.
You know, this is not very common for movies in this time. We see a woman get slapped and then shot twice in the first scene. And then we cut to Fat Mo being totally beaten to a pulp on this punching bag. And that's two opening scenes of very explicit violence. So I think the next thing I would want to mention about the beginning would be the phone ringing scene, the opium telephone. So we see Noodles in this Chinese puppet theater. In downstairs we have a show going on, but upstairs they have an opium den where they take hits of opium. We see Noodles and the newspapers in front of him, and he picks it up and he sees the article about his three friends. It says bootleggers trapped by feds, 3 slain. But then he sits back and all eggs, and then this phone starts ringing. There's no phone in the room, but that's just him hearing the phone. And then we hear this phone, and you're like, what is going on? And the flame, zoom in on the flame, and then we cut to the street. I think that's a really well done transition, I think, where we go in on this, and then it comes out on that light swinging on the street, and then the phone ringing, and we keep going back and back and back, and hear the phone more. And then we see the 3 of them on the street, and them being put in body bags. Say, the first time I saw that, I'll admit, the phone, I was like, why am I hearing this phone ringing for 4.5 minutes? That's what I thought the first time.
I honestly thought when I first saw it, it was okay to ring like a couple times, and then after that, I just thought, like, is my mind playing tricks with me? Am I still hearing this?
Yeah, I was the same way.
Will it ever stop?
Yeah, I was like, am I supposed to be hearing this phone for 5 minutes? That's what I was thinking, and once we got to the speakeasy, and we saw the scene which later comes on 3 hours later in the film, we see the Prohibition cake being carried out, and Max raising his cup, and we see Carol and Eve, and we see all this stuff, and we don't know what it is yet, but we're still hearing this phone, and I'm like, why is this? And I just didn't get what was so good about it the first time hearing that phone. And then he walks into that room and picks up the phone to call the sergeant, and then the phone stops ringing when the sergeant picks up the phone. And I think I got it the second time, because the first time I was like, okay, so he's hearing the sound of the phone, wishing that he had hung it up, so that he regrets making that call. I was like, okay. But then the second time I got what was so great about it. I think that scene would have been much different if we didn't hear that ringing, because there's no talking, there's no dialogue. So just seeing all these things happening with no sound at all for 4.5 minutes would have been much different. And I like the phone. I think it's a good addition to the film.
Because I think a lot of people say when they hear that phone ringing for 5 minutes, they're probably just thinking like, oh, is most of the movie going to be phone ringing? I can't stand that.
Yeah. A lot of people say, oh, that phone ringing almost made me turn it off. Well, if it almost made you turn it off, then you shouldn't be watching the movie in the first place. A lot of things that you don't see in a lot of movies that come out today and that time that happen in the film. For one, another one I can think of is where Noodles is stirring his coffee. For over a minute, he's stirring his cup of coffee, and they're all looking at him. And it creates tension. And Sergio Leone is able to say a lot without saying much at all. He can have a scene with no dialogue at all and still convey a lot. Ennio Morricone's score for the movie is not only the best original score written for film or television or anything, it is the best music I've ever heard in my life. No question. Better than Mozart, Beethoven, and that's a bold statement. But I like it better than any music that's ever been put out there. Like, I can see it. It's just so fitting, and maybe you knew this or not, but the proper paperwork wasn't filed to nominate this for an Oscar. So it wasn't nominated for an Oscar. The original score. So because whoever was doing it filed the wrong paperwork, it didn't come through, whatever. So it wasn't. But if it had been, it would have won the Oscar, because it is absolutely the best music made for the movie business. Absolutely. And let's take a minute to appreciate his original score. My personal favorite score that he made for the film was Deborah's theme. One of the most like haunting pieces of music, most like chilling pieces of music I've ever heard. I love it.
Honestly, it's beautiful. What do you think about the acting, honestly? Like, what do you think about Robert De Niro's performance, all of their performances? What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think that in the movie, I think James Woods is really the standout there. Him and De Niro are the best. That scene on the beach in Florida is my absolute favorite scene of the film. You know, he's got this plan he's so passionate about to tell Noodles about, that he's got this
dream I've been dreaming all my life. Swear to God, Noodles, you and me together, we can make it come true.
He conveys this to Noodles with like such confidence that he draws it in the sand, even puts FR on it. And then Noodles, he's stirring his drink, there's a pause, and then Noodles, he tells him,
"You're really crazy."
Don't you ever say that to me. Ever say that to me again!
I think James Woods acted in that scene, like I thought it was phenomenal in that scene. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And then we hear that music again, and as he walks down the beach, and they're all looking at him, and it's a startling scene. I always ask people this when I watch it with them or they've seen it. I always ask them. They say, "What is your favorite timeline that the film goes into?" For me, it's 1933. It's probably it's the most prominent part of the film. It's got the most scenes. It's the most interesting. It's where the actors are at their best, in my opinion. Because sure, the kid actors are great, but these are like Oscar-winning, great, like Shakespearean actors in 1933. So that takes the prize for my favorite timeline.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I would probably say either 1930s or I would say 1960s. I just thought the whole 1960s scene was just so... It's just a good way.
I just think that more people need to know about it. Like, every person I meet, I tell them, I say, "Have you ever seen Once Upon a Time in America?" They say, no, I never heard of it, or I never seen it. But then I say, "Oh, come over to my house, we'll watch it." I've shown this to, say, count 10 people. Drew's one of them, because when I met him, I had told him about it, and they've all said that it's a great movie, and they say they don't know why they hadn't heard of it.
Out of 100, let's give our final scores. Out of 100, what would you give this movie?
The movie gets a 100 from me because I just think it's the best movie of all time, so it gets 100 from me.
For me, I give it about a 98. I still think, yeah, it's one of my favorites. Right now, it's doing some competition with The Godfather for me, but I still think it's pretty. It's really, really, really good.
Mm-hmm. It is. A 98 is a great score, anyways. And
yeah.
And favorite. One thing I wanted to say. We said favorite scene. We said score. How about favorite quote?
Probably "Don't say that." You know, a scene where you say that he
says you're really crazy. That's it.
That's my favorite line of the whole movie. For me,
it's a tough call, but I like when Max is reprimanding Noodles for not wanting to invest in the politicians because Prohibition's ending. Invest in the trucking empire with the politicians, and he says, "You'll carry that stink of the streets with you the rest of your life." And he says, "I like the stink of the streets. It makes me calm. I like the smell of it. Opens up my lungs. It gives me a hard on." I like that quote. I like that quote the most. Yeah. But thank you for watching, and if you have not seen the movie, definitely check it out. It's my favorite. So
And I will see you next time, Drew Reviews.